Whether it be Star Wars or Star Trek, science fiction and space operas often come up with a slew of alien races that we humans share the wider universe with. Personally, I love the Time Lords from Doctor Who. Oh, and the Centaurans are pretty nice as well. Homicidal potatoes with a sense of honor. What's not to love? Another show that has a slew of alien races that have captured fans' imaginations and hearts is Babylon 5. And in this video, we'll walk you through 15 of the most popular races that populate the Babylon 5 universe, and what they look like in their native habitats. Oh, and we'll tell you what said habitats are as well. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
The year is 2258. The name of the place is Babylon 5.
But first, let's talk about the titular show itself. After all, many fans considered this space opera iconic, with a great criticism of fascism and how a society descends into that. Babylon 5 has been called by many Casablanca in space. While the setup might not be as great as it is in modern media, fans have opined that the great story and cast make that negligible. Despite budget and tech keeping us stuck in the space station, it had realistic tales, despite taking from Tolkien to create a story of good versus evil. Can the elves and the Dwaro of this world put their differences aside to save the galaxy? This show brought in consequences for the characters, a long-term storyline, and more to the world of television. But who were these characters and the elves and Dwaro and hobbits of the space station? Well, they were Centauri, Drak, Dilgar, and more. So it's time for us to get the TARDIS and take a little trip through time and space to Babylon 5. Vorlon. The oldest species in the Babylon universe, the Vorlon's appearance is often unknown to other species. This is because they wore an encounter suit to make interactions with other species easier. Otherwise, it takes a toll on their telepathic abilities. You see, known as some of the first ones, this species played parts in the development of other species. As such, as they appeared as beings from the culture, they were interfering with its mythos. 'Cause telepathic abilities. For example, on Earth, they were often seen as angels. No wonder we describe our angels as bioluminous beings, as Vorlons are bioluminous, despite being partly translucent. They're also radically symmetrical and octopus-like, with multiple tentacles. Incredibly long-lived with the ability of flight. In the final Shadow War, it was Vorlons versus Shadows. At first, attacks worked well in the shadows, but once Shadows had gathered their allies, their attacks came out of the shadows. Entire Vorlon-associated worlds met their end at the hands of Death Clouds, who retaliated by attacking shadow-touched planets. Eventually, the Army of Light got involved, and showed the Vorlons that they weren't hurting advancements anymore, but hindering it, which resulted in the first ones leaving Babylon's version of our galaxy. But how are these foes? Shadow? Are they like the Selene from Doctor Who? Or something like Balrogs? Let us take a look at them. Shadows. Another race among the first ones is the Shadows. They're usually colored purple or black, but since they can make themselves invisible from the visible spectrum, they're more likely to be seen as static on the edge of the spectrum. Yet, if you're ready to be terrified, we will share what they're actually like, okay? On the count of 3, if you're still here. 1, 2, 3. Imagine if an Earth-sized Shelob, yes, the spider from Lord of the Rings, had a baby with a mantis. Now add a triangular head and 7 pairs of pinpoint eyes in 2 rows on said head. Yep, presenting the Shadows. Staunch believers in the survival of the fittest in war. This is a race with Viltrumite-like ideology, and yep, they went to war with the Volrons. Their existence was always, well, warlike. In times of peace, they would recede into the shadows and only keep control of a few planets near their base planet, a tomb planet called Zahadum. This was done via their servant races. When war started, they would expand rapidly, because unlike Vorlons, they spent the time advancing their existing tech. They sowed seeds in the younger races, and were one of the main players in the final Shadow War. But who were these servant races that did the bidding of the Shadows? Let's take a look at them.
Are you a Drak?
Drak. Seen as a frightening legend, this servant race for the Shadows is bright, cruel, and ruthless. They're a race of bipedal reptilian humanoids, with an outer skin that resembles scales, which makes sense given the Drak were experimented upon by the Shadows to thrive in chaos. Another prominent feature on this race is that they have 2 crests that bend backward toward their skull. Some Drak have a specialized pouch on the left side of their chest. This is used for a nefarious purpose. They use this to bond with the newborns of a creature known as the Keeper, which they use to control other races. With advanced mental abilities, it's no wonder this race was seen as ruthless, and even created a Drak empire, and manipulated and controlled several races, including the next one on the list, the Centauri.
We have 6
We have 6, you see, and each one has a different level of intimacy.
The Centauri. You would hear the name and think they would be like centaurs, right? But the Centauri of Babylon 5 are not a half-human, half-horse race. No, in fact, they're strikingly similar looking to humans, just like humans were to the Time Lords of Doctor Who. Yep, the two races could easily pass for each other, unless one examines attire and hair very closely. Centauri men have hairstyles, and their women are almost bald. So essentially, if humans wanted to lead an espionage mission on Centauri planets, all they had to do was visit a barber. Well, no, there's a reason we brought Time Lords, the alien species the Doctor Who is from, into the mix. Just like the Lords of Time, the Centauri have telepathy and 2 hearts. They also have tentacles, which are used for reproduction, though they're usually folded over the solar plexus. Oh, and there's the precognition too. This was a race whose military was under Drakh influence and control for a while. Another notable thing is that they have a beautiful culture, as they value status and titles a lot. Yet, they also went to war with the Narn, whom a few other races sided with against the Centauri. Shall we look at the Narn next?
It's our turn now. One night you'll wake up and find our teeth at your throat.
Narn. Conquered by the Centauri on 2 occasions, this reptilian-looking species is more like Earth marsupials than anything else, with heterosexual and viviparous reproduction. However, their babies stay in a pouch in the male's abdominal region for nurturing. Humanoid with a yellowish-orange mottled complexion, the Narn have very acute vision, and one of the species that the Volrons turn into telepaths. Despite this, they were almost all wiped out in the first Shadow War, which made them obsessed with finding any and all advantages, including breeding the telepathic gene. Another race that faced extinction, and this one did not survive, is the next on our list.
Used to frighten children into behaving. Be good, or the Dark Angel will bring you the curse of Drapha.
Marob. The Marob look like humans, though they have a variety of shades their skin can appear in, ranging from pink and gray. They also lack noses and have indentations on their head. Voldemort in his later years would fit particularly well with these aliens. Or, well, he would have before the Drapha Plague wiped out all the Marob. They were one of the races that contributed to the construction of Babylon 5. While they were wiped out before the Shadows revealed themselves, many fans have speculated, like characters in Universe, that the Shadow race was behind the plague that killed the Marob. The Marob's religious belief played a strong part in making this plague as effective as it was. You see, they believed immorality would bring the wrath of the gods, and no one wanted to associate with the immoral. So those infected by the plague either kept silent to avoid scandal, or worse, thinking themselves to be moral, thought themselves immune and mingled freely with the rest of the people, causing annihilation. Another race with religious beliefs this strong was the Minbari, whom we will look at now.
The crew of the Tregati were heroes to many of our people. Their death will be mourned. And your name.
Minbari. One of the younger races, the Minbari are bipedal humanoids. What is striking about their appearance, you ask? Well, they have antler-like structures curving to the back of their head, specifically the crown region. Yep, prongs. Another characteristic is their lack of body hair. Though just like Earth people, some of the Minbari men can grow beards. They're also very resilient and keep standing even after substantial hits. Another aspect that fans found fascinating is their religion, as we have mentioned. You see, Minbari didn't only want to preserve their soul, but they were also very candor. Yes, like the Divergent faction. Lying was the greatest sin in their culture, unless it was to help another save face. Oh, and they had a caste system, which was reflected in their fashion. So, what role did this race play in the final Shadow War, you ask? Well, they sided with the Volron, against the Narn, League of Non-Aligned Worlds, and of course the titular Babylon 5. As we know, the war ended with the other races known as the first ones leaving the galaxy. Now, we know you're wondering who was this League of Non-Aligned Worlds? Well, it was a group of alien races that had banded together for military support, since they didn't join any of the big guns. These guys were essentially the Babylon 5 version of the Satines and her Mandalore-led neutral states from Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the animated show. One of the races which was part of this alliance was the Pakara. Let's take a gander through their history, shall we? Pakara. Are these the first multipeds on our list? Yes. Large-bodied, they have a distinctive vestigial hump on their back. Think Silence from Doctor Who, with their tentacled faces and stretch them in size. You have the Pakara. Despite being strong and having multiple limbs, they're kind of slow. They only have one gender and reproduce asexually. Their eating habits were such that the space station Babylon 5 had special toilets for them. The other races looked down on them for the way they perceived this race as lazy and obnoxious, until they realized the Pakara were an entirely task-oriented race, and that well, it made interaction so much easier. Their culture is one of discovery and taking what new ideas they learn and find sensible into their culture. In the Shadow War, their race suffered under the Drak like many others. They also suffered from the plague that wiped out the Marob due to similar brain chemicals, but their suffering was the reason the plague's cure was developed. Another power these people have is that due to how they're shunned, they have become excellent infiltrators, couriers, and cryptologists. The last fun fact about the Pakara is that they were both part of the Interstellar Alliance and the League, along with another young humanoid race with a bulbous head like xenomorphs. Yep, we're talking about
Could I please have a translation team in here?
the Vree. Think of a mixture of the xenomorph head with black eyes and fandom Dwaro cultures from the Lord of the Rings. Yes, smooth, hairless skinned creatures who are part of guilds. A part of a capitalistic society, the Vree are naturally competitive. They're also fierce and wild, with a large helping of mischief in their culture. Their culture is so strong on guilds and how inter-guild love stories work that they had a Romeo and Juliet war. A Vree was forced to divorce her husband because negotiations between their two guilds broke down. Imagine that. The fun fact is that the Vree look very similar to two servant races of the Shadows, yet they are the naval backing of the League with their powerful spacefaring tech and navy. Time to get the ball rolling again. Lort, another race that, like the Vree and the Pakara, was part of both the League and the Alliance. They look like an armadillo fused with a human and are burrow dwellers like hobbits. They are the Lort, and while they have great night vision, in the daylight it's rarely 20/20, as you would say. One of their problems was constant infighting between different classes, which led many to think it's a miracle that this species exists at all. Do we have any Lort fans in the house? Let us know in the comments. Until then, it's time to look at the next race on our list, which is, drumroll please,
Cycle not Drazi week. Cycle is Drazi year. 1 Drazi year equal 1.2 human.
Drazi. The Drazi have distinctive brows with scales. They also have ridge scales that go down the back of their head, making them look reptilian. They're humanoid and have 4 primary ethnic groups based on skin color, prizing loyalty, despite being warlike. This race was an honored member of the League of Non-Aligned Worlds until its dissolution. Yet the Drazi also have long enmities, such as with the Centauri, who had taken some of the Drazi border territories during the Centauri War of Aggression. When they started attacking other worlds again, Drazi joined with Narn against the Centauri.
I insist. May the comet bring you wisdom this night.
Brakiri. The Brakiri were another race that was part of the Interstellar Alliance and the League of Non-Aligned Worlds. A nocturnal bipedal race, the Brakiri have distinctive bone ridges above their eyes and on the side of their cheeks, as well as elongated or large nostrils and high foreheads, which sometimes appear cleaved. They remind one of the elves from Mirkwood, fused with the house elves from Harry Potter. They love humans, as when they first began exploring life on other worlds, guess whose 20th century television and radio signals they caught? Yep, ours. This race gets along well with other humanoids, but not so well with non-humanoid races in the Babylon 5 universe. Third space alien. One such non-humanoid race in the Babylon 5 universe is the Ancient Oddities, the third space aliens. Even the Vorlons could not understand these creatures, who had come from an alternate dimension. Beyond comprehension, these creatures resemble Earth arachnids or cephalopods. They're considered extremely large by humanoid standards, and their bodies consist of a large bulbous head-like structure, which is adorned with 6 glowing eyes. Think Gollum, but huge and spidery. In the third space alien race, this head-like structure is set atop a folded fleshy structure that behaves like a torso, in that it supports several sets of dexterous appendages. These beings also defy laws of biology and believe they are supreme, in the sense that only they deserve to exist. As such, in their own universe, they destroyed countless races, created by famous fantasy and sci-fi artist Wayne D. Barlow. These creatures fought with the Vorlons and were defeated, but they waited till they could fight again. See, the Vorlons built a portal to the third space dimension, which they closed when they realized just who lived there. But this gate was lost in hyperspace. When found again and brought to Babylon 5, the third space aliens saw their chance, and ho ho ho, they telepathically influenced a team to open the portal and release them. This has such Doctor Who Doomsday vibes, I tell you. So did these aliens get defeated again? Well, for that you have to watch Babylon 5, don't you? Until then, what we can tell you is about yet another alien species that frequent the titular space station.
But I have a compromise, which...
No! No more compromises! We will no longer be dictated.
Ababi, the humanoid amphibians that can breathe both in water and in a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere. Who else remembers Toad from the first X-Men movie? The Ababi are nothing like that. They have fish-like ridged crests on their heads, a raised bone structure above the eyes, and some quite prominent cheekbones. Trust me, there's a reason contouring isn't part of their fashion and makeup. They're a pretty chill race with no concept of cheating in relationships, and 16 major religions that all respect each other. Oh, and they have more females than males. Despite there being almost no gender inequality. Many would think this would lead to an unstable society, but that isn't the case. These are a people who prize beauty, cooperation, knowledge, philosophy, and gentility. They also adore meeting new races. Reminds you a little bit of the Pakara's habit of taking bits of others' cultures into their own. So nice to see. They're also telepathic and have limited empath abilities, which probably is the reason behind their culture being so respectful of its various religions. So is that it? 15 major races from Babylon 5 without counting the folks from planet Earth? Of course not. We still have the methane-breathing game.
The Queens thank you for your help in this, Delenn.
It's not a problem, Lisha.
Game. Like the Vorlon, these aliens too wear suits when interacting with other races, but that's because the game literally breathe methane. Yes, methane like the greenhouse gas cows and landfills produce. Also, they're a little like ants in the sense that they have a queen and the rest of the people are genetically obedient to her. This means that unless chemicals are involved, there's no way a rebellion is taking place. Creatures like the game are essentially insectoids, which is a very common trope in sci-fi known as bug wars, and boy do fans love this concept. The game also have no religion, since the queen ain't the only nestling who ever tried to prove God existed. Nice. Am I the only one slowly backing away? Well, yes, there you have it. The alien races that frequent the fights in bars of Babylon 5. What do we think of them, folks? Let us know in the comments. And don't leave yet, for we still have one thing waiting for you. Yep, you guessed it. We have...
This homeworld of yours. Did it have a name?
A marvelous verdict. Humans and folks from planet Earth have always been depicted as spacefaring in most science fiction post the 60s. Babylon 5 was a trendsetter among these, giving us a universe populated with various cultures and biological beings, showing us how they can coexist or be drives of extinction. We saw how different types of societies and bodies interacted with each other, the reaction from the rest of the universe, and we saw it all made from one space station made of drapes and no CGI. Sure, some fans might scoff at the looks of the aliens in this show, given that compared to the Centauri or whatever Mantis is, these creatures look like actors with bad makeup in most cases. Yet, unlike the later X-Men movies made by Fox, this does not take away from the joy that is watching Babylon 5, thanks to the stellar writing and acting. So if you're a lover of sci-fi and all things alien and space, or just a sociology nerd trying to see ways in which different cultures can act, Babylon 5 is a must-watch on your list, with cultures, aliens, and plots that are like no other, but inspired a lot of sci-fi we grew up on. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone!